So, we have a diver and we have a dress watch. Both of course have mechanical movements inside. Now, all we need to complete our three-piece collection is a mechanical chronograph, but there lies a bit of a problem though, because mechanical chronographs are notoriously expensive, unless of course we opt out for one of those Siegel 1963 types, but even those are not created equal, and a good quality control, for example, is an absolute must, and that's where this Merkur reverse Panda chronograph can help us out. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're not subscribed yet, well, we do watch reviews and talk about watches on this channel and occasionally drink coffee. Well, if this is your thing, apart from coffee of course, then do join us by hitting that big red subscribe button. I think it's somewhere over there. Right, you probably did see the pop-up. Merkur did send this watch to me for free and I don't have to send it back. In return, of course, they would like me to point you to their website, and there will be a link in the description, and of course to provide a comprehensive and impartial review of this watch, which I promise I'll do my best. But wait, there is more. No, seriously, Merkur provided a discount code for the channel, and that discount code will give you an instant $40 off of any purchase on their website. I'll put the details of that code in the description of the video. Now, with their prices hovering around $200 mark, that is an instant almost 20% discount, so do take advantage of that code. And by the way, I'm not affiliate of Merkur and therefore will not be making any commission on those sales. Now, with all this out of the way, let's get on with the review. In this video, sticking to my usual format, I will go over dimensions and specifications of this watch, and then of course I will share things that I like and of course things that I didn't like as much, based on my initial impressions. After spending some time with this watch, to be quite honest, I'm now starting to understand why these mechanical chronographs are so popular. I'm actually surprised how much I enjoy winding this watch up in the morning, or timing how long it takes to make my coffee, or just checking the movement operations through the see-through bag when I engage the chronograph pushers. As I usually do when I encounter the brand for the first time, I looked at the Merkur brand background, so their brand story is straightforward and to the point, which I like. In 2019, Merkur acquired a number of interesting brands that are now under Merkur umbrella, including Pierre Paulin that we have here. Looks like these acquisitions allowed Merkur to diversify their offerings. Merkur website features some really cool divers watches, military field watches, retro and contemporary design chronograph watches, and even tourbillons for a very competitive prices. And by the look of it, they pay special attention to the movements they use. Because the chronographs, for example, are not your run-of-the-mill standard ST1901 Siegel movements. These are well-decorated movements with swan neck regulator, which is not only nice to look at, but also allows for a more precise accuracy settings before the watch leaves the factory. And these guys do take their quality control quite seriously, as well, as we will see as we take a closer look at this Pierre Paulin chronograph. Okay, before we actually look inside the box, looks like the actual box deserves a bit of attention as well. It is quite robust, yet flexible, and a good-looking box in my opinion, and I plan to reuse it as a travel case that I think can easily hold at least 2 timepieces. Now, in the box we get some marketing material and contact details and the list of brands that Merkur currently represents, stamped and dated warranty card, a full user manual which also showcases some of the Merkur's other watches, branded microfiber cloth, good quality little push pin removal tool, nice touch, and something of a quick startup guide for this particular watch. We also get something that we don't see very often, a time grapher quality control check, which at least to me means that someone took time to check the accuracy of this watch before it was packaged and ready to be shipped. Dimensions. The watch has a classic retro 1963 chronograph measurements, about 38mm in diameter and 18mm lugs. The height of the watch is about 14.5mm, out of which at least 3mm is taken by this lovely domed crystal, more about it in a moment. Lug tip to lug tip is about 46.5mm. I was a bit concerned about the size of the watch, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much wrist presence it has. This is because the bezel is thin and the dial is fully opened and it takes most of the visual space. Actually, if we measure the dial, it is about 34.5 millimeters. For comparison, on your average 40 millimeter something diver with a bezel, the dial is usually only 31 millimeter in diameter. On the supplied leather strap, this watch weighs 57 grams. The leather strap slightly tapers down to about 16.5 millimeters towards the buckle, which is about 19 millimeters wide. The leather strap at full length should cover about 8.25-inch wrist or just over 21 centimeter. I will do some wrist shots later in the video, including one on a 6.25-inch wrist. And here is the watch on my about 7-inch wrist. Dial. Well, dial is definitely one of the highlights of this watch. This one is so-called reversed Panda colorway, and I think it works very well. There is a tachymeter scale on the outer perimeter of the dial. Then we get to the detailed minute chaptering, which seems right at home on this Chronograph tool watch. We have applied mirror-polished hour indices that bounce the light quite nicely, definitely helps with legibility. We also have a C3 superluminova applied to the outer sides of the hour indices. Not a lot of lume, but sufficient to make the indices legible in the dark. We have two white subdials, one at 9 o'clock is the running seconds one, and the subdial at 3 o'clock is used as a minute counter for the chronograph up to 30 minutes. We have sword or pencil style hands, depends of course who you ask. Both have nicely polished facets and also bounce the light quite well, and the hands also filled with lume, which is a bit of a pleasant surprise on this style watch. Not over the top again, but definitely more than just for show. Second hand stretches nicely all the way to the edge of the minute chaptering and actually ever so slightly over. And the minute hand is also of the right length. Polished minute and hour hand and white second hand with a combination of the black dial makes this watch very legible indeed. In terms of wording on the dial, I'm okay with the layout and the font. It is consistent with the numerals of the dial and makes the dial look quite balanced in my opinion. In regards to the quality control issues, well, I examined this watch with the naked eye and under the macro lens, and the dial, hour indices and hands are very well assembled and are very clean. Another sign of good quality control and well set up manufacturing process. Crystal. Merkur decided to stick to the traditional acrylic domed crystal. It looks great in my opinion, giving the right amount of distortion and giving the watch that warm vintage feel, and keeping the dial fully opened and very legible. Another advantage of acrylic is low reflectivity, that is, it does not need an anti-reflective coating to maintain a good legibility. Acrylic is of course susceptible to scratches, and I will talk about it a bit more in the summary of this review. However, even though it is susceptible to scratches, it is quite easy to buff those scratches out by using ordinary toothpaste or something called POLYWATCH, which is specifically designed for this type of crystals. I actually have a few watches in my collection with acrylic crystal, and by the way, I never buffed them out. One of them, of course, is my Vostok, which was my daily beater for 2 years, and I also have this Slava, which is about 30 years old and was in a daily use for a big part of that time, and it was never polished or buffed. Moving on to the case, full stainless steel construction, very good finishing all around, there is no sharp edges or any half-finished areas. I like the finish on the transitions between the surfaces, a very subtle detail but one of the telltale signs of well-finished case. We have circular brushing on top of the case and the bezel and a mirror-polished flanks and the lugs. The mirror-polished finish continues between the lugs as well. We have piston-style, nicely finished chronograph pushes and signed crown. Crown is well-proportioned, easy to operate, and I like the laser etched signature. Merkur declares 30 meters of water resistance on this watch, which is perfectly acceptable on this style mechanical chronograph watch. Personally, I try to keep my chronographs away from the water. Moving over to the back of the case, a screw-on case back with some basic specs of the watch, but then we are presented with this beautiful view of the Seagull ST 1901 movement. Right, this is one of the potentially key reasons to buy this watch. Well, would be for me in any case. This is, of course, the famous Seagull ST1901 movement, first featured in Chinese Air Force military chronograph, which is mostly known as Seagull 1963. The movement in its roots is a Swiss column wheel chronograph caliber Venus 175. In 1960s, Chinese Ministry of Light Industry purchased license and machinery and tooling required to produce this movement and then adopted it to the local requirements. Since then, the operating frequency was increased from 18,000 to 21,600 beats per hour, and number of joules was increased from 17 to 21. And there are a lot of different versions of this movement were produced, mainly different by the layout and the number of available subdials. However, at its core, the main operating principle is still the same as it was on the original Swiss movement. And while we're on the subject of movement history, this movement shares the same operating principle, column wheel, with another legendary chronograph movement, Lemania, which was used by Omega in their famous Moon watch. And just to clarify, this movement do share similar designs. However, this Seagull is based on the Venus caliber and not Lemania. Right. The movement is well decorated with some Geneva stripes on some of the plates and also has a swan neck regulator, which is usually used on mid to high-end Swiss watches. And this just makes this movement ever so slightly more special. Merkur includes a set of instructions related particularly to this movement, which is great. It is not overly complex, but there are some useful tips that will prolong the life and will help to maintain the consistent accuracy of this movement. Bracelet or leather strap in this particular case. It is a good quality suede leather strap. Merkur reckons it will age really well. I found it okay, it is very comfortable and comes with a nice signed barcode. However, I much more prefer the look of this reverse Panda chronograph on the dark brown or black Bund leather strap. This is a bit of an individual preference, I guess. I think it works very well with this vintage style of the watch and has a bit of a military or even motor racing vibe to it. Of course, this watch would look great on a NATO style strap as well. I just didn't have an 18mm NATO style one to try it on. Please let us know in the comments what style strap do you think will work with this Merkur chronograph. I might do a brief follow-up video with different straps or even post some pictures on Instagram for a bit of fun. Okay, the good, the bad, and well, sticking to my usual format, the idea is to give this watch a comprehensive review and share what I think are positives and what could have been improved in my opinion. So here it goes. I have been praising this watch right through this review and I think it is well deserved. So for the sake of keeping this section short, I will first highlight what are the key positives. The first, of course, a thought through with attention to details construction, a very good quality control and interesting, well-decorated movement. And of course, the price point of around $200 is not to be left out either. It is a competitive segment and this watch definitely deserves a second look. And of course, don't forget that $40 discount code in the description of the video. As for the possible improvements, well, as I already mentioned, I am quite comfortable with acrylic crystal used. If we are to draw a parallel with Omega Speedmaster, the most authentic Speedmaster is still considered one with a Hesselite crystal, which is a fancy name for acrylic. However, I would like to see Merkur offering this one with sapphire crystal option. I know that sapphire crystal of this shape most likely will warrant something called boxed sapphire crystal, which is quite expensive to manufacture and could potentially push the price up, but having an option with a sapphire crystal or with acrylic would be nice in my opinion. And even though I like the strap, it comes with an alternative option or an additional either NATO style or Bund style strap would be an advantage. What are your thoughts? Please let us know in the comments. And if you find this review helpful, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.